We've got our hands on the Xbox One X, and now you can get one too, but is that a good idea? We spent the last week putting this baby through its paces to find out.
So let's start off with the bad news. The Xbox One X is going to set you back 650 Australian dollars.
Hoo-wee!
For that money, you get a 2.3 gigahertz 8-core processor, 12 gig of RAM, and a 6 teraflop AMD GPU, along with a 4K Blu-ray player and 1 terabyte hard drive.
In layman's terms, it's heaps more powerful than your current Xbox and a little bit more powerful than the PS4 Pro.
That's right, it's also heaps smaller than the original Xbox, which was of course big enough to fit in all the gaming hardware and then rent as a twin share on Airbnb. But that is what it is made of. Steph, what were your impressions?
It's heavier though, don't you think?
Oh, it's so heavy.
Heavy with power.
It's dense and thick. I mean, they put the power supply in there along with all the flops.
Which is the future. No more like big power brick to worry about. It's all in there.
And let's start surface level here. What do you think about the look?
Well, I think it calls back to the original, but it's sleeker and more obelisk-like.
Yeah, it kind of just blends into the rest of the black shit you have around your television and that sort of thing. Like, it's unobtrusive.
Which is what you want, I think.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I don't think it looks as sexy as the Xbox One S. I really like that white look. I know you're not.
You love white.
I like white hardware, because everything else is just so dark and dull.
It's so 60s, like people in like mini dresses on like rockets to the moon with white everything.
It's coming back, baby. But I think, you know, it just blends into the background. They've also included, I wish they included the Elite controller with this one.
Yeah, but they want people to cough up for that, I think.
They really do, but I think it would have been a nice inclusion. This is just your standard sort of redesigned Xbox One controller, and you know, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so that's the looks. What about when you plugged it in?
Well, first of all, I think this current UI is so good, the user interface.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving over time, and at times it's been a bit too cluttered, but right now I think it's just perfect.
Yeah.
I think interesting that PlayStation has just been the same the whole time.
Oh, it's so terrible, the PlayStation One, I really hate it. Yeah, it's snappy as well on this one. Obviously, that's not the thing that's gonna test the hardware here, but everything is very responsive.
But it matters, just moving through the menus. It's
100%.
It's crisp and clean and quick.
My first impressions of this is everything I played on it was a little bit better. Every game I booted up, whether it was, you know, something brand new like the new Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or, you know, Wolfenstein or something, or going back to, I played some original Destiny on it, I played Viva Pinata, like old emulator games and that sort of thing. All of it just loads faster, runs smoother.
Yes, you can run games on this at up to 4K 60 frames per second, and there are Xbox games that'll be released that are Xbox One X enhanced, but if you're playing a game that isn't enhanced, it'll still upscale it quite a lot, which I think is really cool.
100%. The thing that killed it for me is the downloads, because these enhanced games are just massive. I mean, I downloaded Forza to check that out. That's over 100 gig. Gears of War 4 was over 100 gig. That means like, if, you know, running at that sort of level, you're fitting 10 games on this thing and then you're out. And while I'm not necessarily the kind of person who wants to keep all my games that I ever play on here, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you like,
I like to hoard them like gold.
Well, so you're hoarding 10 at a time, and then the problem is if you're deleting them, then you need, if you want to play it again, that's a massive download. So you're gonna need to buy a hard drive to export them out to store. You know, that's not a problem with the console, that's a problem with 4K and our internet. I mean, it's pretty much a problem with our internet. That's very true.
So once you were playing games on this, were you dazzled?
I was so dazzled. If you've got it hooked up to a 4K HDR TV, the games look phenomenal. Assassin's Creed, did you play Assassin's Creed on this thing?
Yeah.
It looks so good. I mean, everything about it, there's the 4K, you know, textures and everything, but the HDR, which is something that is so hard to show on TV because it's something that your television is doing, it's not necessarily, we can capture it. But light just looks so different. It's like looking out of a window. There's shades of color that I didn't know existed, and this is something that once I saw it, I just went, oh God, I'm actually gonna need to buy a 4K TV with HDR for my house.
I think for me, it's worth also just playing an older game that has been enhanced and you just really notice the difference. I think Gears of War was one that I played that I was like, oh wow, this looks better than I remember it. And it's worth even looking up some comparisons online and stuff as well, because as you mentioned with the HDR, it's quite obvious.
And it's so interesting, you were talking earlier about how this is much more of a PC. With Gears of War, you know, there are games that are now giving us PC style options. You can boot up Gears of War 4 and it'll say, do you want to want to prioritize visuals or performance. If you pick visuals, it's going 4K at 30 frames per second. If you pick performance, it's making it 1080p, but then running it at 60 frames. So we are beginning to customize the games in the way that you want to play it, which is, I think that's good, but I don't know, for console owners, if you don't want to wade into the PC world, where does it get to the point where you go, I just want to play something and it just works? I don't want to have to fiddle around with settings.
All right, well, we've received some questions from you guys about the Xbox One X, and the first one comes from Scritchy. There's an X in the middle, so it's hard to pronounce. I don't know. Scritchy asks, how loud is it? I think it's louder than the original Xbox, but I think the fans just kick in when they need to be, cooling everything down. Yeah,
it wasn't too distracting for me, but there is just a stack of heat coming out the back of this.
Right.
Every time I reach behind to unplug an HDMI cable or something, it was just, my hand got scalded. So make sure you don't put it in a enclosed area. Yeah, totally.
Oh my gosh.
Did you not notice that?
No.
Did you not notice my burnt hands? Our next question comes in from Monique. Is there a noticeable difference in the quality of the games played on it compared to the base Xbone?
Yes, I mean, it depends on the game. I think everything in theory should be running smoother and faster with a little bit less framiness and that kind of thing. Something like Destiny, for example, runs a lot better. And
also, it's using lots of tricks to take advantage of the hardware. So games will run at 16 times anisotropic filtering. So what that basically means is when you're in a vast open world, it's loading textures that are different rates of resolution as things get further away from you to save on sort of power. Most Xbox games are running 4 times filtering. So that means there's only 4 versions of textures loaded in the game world. So that's why some parts of game worlds look kind of shit at a distance, but this one is running at 16 times, so there's a much gradual change. So everything just kind of looks better because of that sort of thing. It's also forcing VSync on all your games as well, so you're not going to get any more screen tearing.
It also uses super sampling, so if you don't have a 4K TV, the game is still going to render it in 4K and then just shrink it down to fit your TV, so it's still going to look better because there's more information crammed in there. So I guess, Nick, the question is, should you get this if you already have an Xbox? And I feel like that really depends on whether or not you have a 4K TV.
Yeah, if you have a 4K TV with HDR and you like Xbox games, it's a no-brainer because
totally
it looks phenomenal. If you do not have that television,
I just don't think it's going to improve your life enough to warrant the cost.
That's right. Like, if you can afford it, treat yourself, maybe? treat yourself because it will make everything look a bit better, but it's not a must-have if you don't have the other insanely expensive hardware to run it.